put up here in broad daylight, and so he should come down in broad daylight.
That statue of Columbus had stood for nearly 80 years, but came down in just a matter of seconds.
Similar monuments are being removed around the country.
It was the start of a racial reckoning so many of us never expected to see.
We were living through these processes where some monuments were being removed, right? And of course, the first monuments that were considered more offensive were the monuments of the Confederacy that have been problematic and have been the symbols of slavery and racism. So they've been questioned, and also their artistic value has been questioned. But that also led to the questioning of all sorts of other monuments. In the case of Mexico, for example, the Columbus Monument. Or in Los Angeles, the monument to Junípero Serra, right? Like the missionaries, or in New Mexico to Oñate. Here in the United States, it had to do a lot with the Confederacy and with issues of racism. Whereas in Mexico, a lot of the protests had to do with police brutality against women. And I guess also in Latin America, not just in Mexico, because you also had all these other feminist chants that were coming from Chile, and these interventions in public spaces where often these monuments are displayed.
Millions of women around the world took to the streets Sunday to mark International Women's Day. In Mexico City, at least 60 people were wounded as riot police confronted protesters carrying signs that read, "You're killing us and we want to live without fear."
And these monuments are monuments not just of colonialism, but also they're patriarchal monuments, right? They happen to be always guys, these conquistadors. And so there's the requesting of these monuments. And in the words of Bakunin, destruction is a creative process. And destruction as a creative process, again, is something that sort of relates to this idea of these cycles. There are different ways to block or destroy or deface an image, right? In the case of the glitter revolution, or what I did with those paintings, is that you cover certain symbols or certain signs with different materials, right? I mean, it could be painting. In this case, it was glitter. But glitter in itself has also signifies something else, right? So there's a new meaning that gets to be acquired by these covering things or throwing glitter at something. One very dramatic example that has this particular symbolism is it's burning something, right? So there's, I guess, this very dramatic gesture of burning a flag. But the flag is not really, again, it's just a representation, right? It's a symbol that in this case represents this abstract idea of a country. What happens when you burn a flag? I mean, you burn a flag and then you produce ashes, right? And these ashes, something else comes of that. You don't really destroy the thing. I mean, you just transform it. And with these ashes, I produce these other flags, right? These monochrome flags, these black flags, where the ashes were used as pigment to make ink. Which goes again to these discussions about iconoclasm and the negation of symbols, the negation of ornamentation. What is the meaning of ornamentation? So for me, the politics of these are very interesting, are very fascinating, I think a lot about them. I mean, why do we like what we like? Why do we find beauty in certain things and not others? This idea of an American black flag, which is a flag that often we associate with the anarchist flag, which is, I guess, another representation of freedom, I suppose. Whether if it's Jasper Johns or David Hammons, it seems to me that it really becomes a symbol of freedom when there's a freedom to create it in different versions and interpretations. But also for me, it's a way to also claim, as I become a citizen, to make my American flag that I would say represents me. And one of these flags actually is interesting because it has color. I mean, you can see blue, white, and red on a black flag. When the light hits in a certain way, the flag would appear. There's one of the images where we look at this flag being burned in a barbecue. On the background, there's an image of the fires in California. Those fires, if controlled, are necessary to recycle the forest, right? So perhaps we should have controlled fires of flags to make sure that the flag grows in its proper way and doesn't turn into a monstrosity that eventually can lead to a major fire. But the negation of representation of symbols becomes a symbol too, because it becomes a symbol of the negation of the representation of symbols. During the pandemic, during the protests against police brutality, there was I believe it was called the Black Tuesday, where everybody started just displaying a black image on Instagram. So all of a sudden, that day, minimalism became pop art because it just appeared in everybody's feed. As we were discussing this whole issue about Black Lives Matter, so I created this collage that together all these black paintings, I suppose they form a big black collage. But inside of them, there are all sorts of different black paintings produced with all sorts of different intentions, right? We have from the Goya's black paintings to Malevich black square, to this Mexican painter, Beatriz Zamora, who's the only thing she did in her life, she spent years just making black paintings. There's a black painting by Anthony Tapies. There's a black painting by Motherwell with a very beautiful quote about black paintings. And he associates black paintings with the Spanish art and what his meaning of black is. And I always been fascinated by those dark black paintings of Goya, the chiaroscuro, and the use of black in Spanish painting, even Guernica, right? I mean, art is a form of expression, right? And it is a particular form of expression. Mathematics expresses numbers, expresses quantities. Art expresses emotions. And I think also art it's a form of philosophy. It's not just expressing emotion, its purpose, but it's also a way of thinking, a way of understanding and expressing certain things that perhaps other forms cannot do. I mean, I guess I tend to react emotionally to most things. That's why perhaps I like art and I do art. But certainly things happen that were close to me. I mean, my father died during this period, and that had me thinking in all sorts of things. My father was a very funny character. He was a very sweet guy, and he was very funny, and he always liked my cartoons. I used to do cartoons when I was a kid. I used to do comics and cartoons. And he always thought that I was a cartoonist. He always said oh, you're always making cartoons. Which I thought was interesting because I guess I have spent my whole life trying to be an artist and trying to make serious art and trying to make paintings. At the end, maybe he was right. Maybe I'm interested in how painting can make other kinds of commentaries in the use of humor and the use of politics and narrative and these other things going on with the image.